All right, welcome everybody to MCU Later. My name is Rich Fann, and we're here to talk about She-Hulk Episode 1, Just the Normal Amount of Rage. Joining me, not as always, because that's really what Way would say, joining WH for this journey is Rich Fann. I'm Rich Fann from Post and Torch. For the next 9 weeks, I am on Team Post, so as you see, my name is back to its at Rich_Fan, and that's it. WH, welcome. How are you doing?
Welcome to my own house.
Yeah, welcome
Thanks.
to your own house. How do you like it?
That's right. I like the renovations you've done since the end of Marvel Girl. It looks really nice.
Got
Thanks,
some
Rich.
sconces, added a little accoutrement, some charcuterie boards, and I think
I hear we can get like some decorations from some warehouse in Enfield. Apparently they're gonna have a fire sale because that place is gonna be closing down or something.
Yeah, they're going down hard. Now, you want to expand on that? You want to talk about the Enfield pain here?
No, why? Like NXT UK, who cares? Who gives a shit? Some stupid brand for like Uncle Paul's stupid ego, and he's gonna expand it to like he's just gonna move all these dummies to like some fucking warehouse in Black Forest, Germany or something, and like full of people who nobody cares about in the world of wrestling. Anyways, I completely digress there. I'm gonna digress maybe one more time, but I'm good. Fine. Rich, this is our first. This is not our first. It's our second episode. We did the primer. We very well received. I had coffee with John Pollock the other week, and he was like, "Dude, loved it." That's my John Pollock impersonation. Is you and Rich, great chemistry. And Cena was good too. See, Cena's an afterthought. And Ceno's gonna be like, Ceno's gonna be like, what the fuck? Yeah, that's right, Cena. You were an afterthought. Pollock was like putting me over, putting Rich Fann over, and put you over last, like you deserve to be. Anyway, sorry.
It's all good. And if you all are enjoying this chemistry and want to hear more, you're going to be on the free side of things right now. This first episode is going to be on the free side of the house. But if you want to hear more, you want to hear more of myself and WH over the next several weeks, Post Wrestling Cafe is where you'd go for the rest of the podcast to sign up. I personally enjoy listening to Pollock and Ting talk. I enjoy, if you want to pay a little bit extra, the Pollock versus Ting. And of course,
that's free.
That's free? That's in the streets.
What? The Pollock versus? We shouldn't even mention these. They don't want to know that people know about this shit public.
It's in there. It's like it's right there on the Patreon page. You got to pay up to I think it's after double.
If you want to hear them talk and answer the listeners' questions, you gotta sign up for the cafe. Yeah, but if you want to watch Pollock versus Ting, the videos, they're on Way's YouTube channel. I still can't believe he's never taken. I still can't believe he's never taken them down. But anyways, I don't. John's gonna be listening to this. He's gonna be like, "W, shut up! Don't talk about that stuff." Shut up. Yeah. But anyways,
so
can I just say before? Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say just to give folks an idea, since this is the free side of the house, you might not have heard it before. MCU Later is the Marvel Comics podcast done here at Post Wrestling. WH Park and Wei Ting have done a phenomenal job over the last few years, not only highlighting it, but then showing deeper dives into the history of the comic book, listener-supported message board commentary, things that have kind of jumped out to them. And it's a pleasure for me to kind of jump into this world and kind of be in the, like, I'm the John David, I'm going to do a little DC John David Irons or John Henry Irons and be Steel for a few weeks while Superman's out convalescent taking care of his young one on the planet Krypton. I know we're jumping companies, but deal with it. It's the only time they get credit for something, because if we do bring them up, it'll be to point and laugh. And so I love MCU Later. Not only am I the host for the next few weeks, but I'm also a Patreon subscriber, 100% for MCU Later. I love hearing it, and I love having these special guests. And this series is going to be no different. Now, traditionally, Way and WH would have guests as you go later in the show, because I'm bringing folks from the Torch universe through the allowed fence, because it's not the forbidden fence. Let's not be dumb about that, or forbidden door. We're not going to talk about Ken Chan yet. We will get to him at some point, I'm sure. WH will have some comments. And so before I start to introduce our first guest for this episode, WH, what were you going to say?
Oh, what about Ken Chan?
No, you were going to say something first before I jumped in and tried to let the people know.
Oh, no, No, I was just gonna say I watched this video on Twitter of like some. I think it was after the camera stopped rolling on Dynamite, and
Yeah.
he was just like Ken Chan was just being a complete nerd about we're gonna change the world with the way we present wrestling. Listen, Ken, you're not gonna stop the fucking war in the Ukraine because like you wear stupid fucking tights in the ring, and you and the Young Bucks want to pretend that it's all fake shit. That's not you're changing the world. You're not changing shit, dude. Anyways, that I just want to say. By the way, I think he came back too soon. Like, what's with the shirt? He looks like shit.
Yeah,
I'm
the
not saying
compression
like
shirt,
I hope
the shoulder
terrible.
harness, the knee pad, like it was a lot. Or not the knee pad, but the knee brace.
Listen, if that's his idea, like, dude, you need to like just get better and come back when you're fully 100%, right? If it's Tony's idea, complete idiot. But who knows? Well, time will tell. Time will tell. Maybe he's working us all. Who knows? But
Yeah, maybe he might be working.
that's all I wanted to say.
Okay. And
we should introduce our guest.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to get in trouble if I take much longer doing it. So, one of the first folks we're going to have as a guest is one of the first people who was truly excited about She-Hulk Attorney at Law, and that was my wife, Melissa Fann. Melissa is a lawyer. She is a awesome mom, and she tolerates not only my forays into wrestling, but the sheer amount of comics that reside in this house, and the amount of times I get up way too early in the morning to watch MCU series and movies before I go to work because that's the only time I can do it. Melissa, welcome. And how are you doing this evening?
So good. We had a birthday party earlier for my son. It was one of his friends, and so we just got back from that. But I was able to watch the first episode today, which was awesome. I fit that in with all that stuff that was going on. But thank you so much for the introduction. We do have a lot of comic books in our house. We're starting the second generation of comic book readers. One of the things that my son is excited to read, are graphic novels. That's really been helpful to get him, more interested in reading. So I'm glad that we have this comic book background to help facilitate that. I think I maybe own like 10 comic books, maybe. That's probably
I just wanted to let you know, Melissa, don't worry. The reason I'm such a profanity filled degenerate is not because of comic books. It's totally because of movies and the people I knew in university.
Fair enough. And so as these various comic books come out in the theater or in, episodes, I've gone to, I would say maybe 70% of them with you and Trey, maybe 60.
Anything that's been under just by my self-imposed cooling rule with you with movies, anything under 3 hours. Like you didn't go to any of the Avengers movies.
Oh yeah, no. I don't know. That's too long.
You went to Black Panther.
Yes.
You went to did you go to no, you definitely didn't go to the Eternals.
No.
Spider-Man, you went to all the Spider-Men.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, no, over 3 hours, that's not gonna be good. I know most people watching this probably strongly disagree, but that's okay. I just don't do long movies. I mean, Titanic, that was probably the last, really long movie. But in any event, that's why this is so awesome because it's episodes, so it's great for someone like me.
Okay.
Yeah, and they're only 30 minutes pretty much each episode, right?
Yeah.
Rich? Yeah.
They're going to be 30 sitcom.
Yeah.
So
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I think it's great. Like, and if people want to binge watch it, like once more episodes are available, like they can do that. Or if they're super busy or just, tend to watch shorter things, then they can watch it too.
Yeah.
One thing I really like because like they moved the release dates from Wednesday to Thursday, and we do the show Thursday nights. We record this on Thursday night. Is that if it was on Wednesday, I had the day to think about it and digest it, and that it only being 30 minutes like helps a lot for me to digest it in the morning before I go to work. And then just while I'm at work, I'm thinking about it and what I'm going to talk about and do some research before we start recording and stuff like that. So that really helps. And I'm kind of glad where it's not like, what's the average, 46 minutes to like 50 minutes on average, Rich?
Yeah. With the occasional foray into something that's like crazy like 70 to 92 minutes if it's like either a big premiere or big finale.
Yeah, and it's cool because even though it's a 30-minute runtime, but it's still longer than your like a sitcom you would watch on TV because there are no commercials. So you're having 30 minutes of the actual show. So you're getting a little bit more than, a half-hour sitcom, but like I said, it's very digestible in terms of the format and content.
Yeah, and speaking of that format and content, Jessica Gao is the head writer of She-Hulk Attorney at Law, and mainly Kat Quaro is the director of record for the show. Out of the 9 episodes, she does 6, and Anu Valia does 3 episodes. And so, one of the first things I want to ask Melissa is, Jessica being the head writer, I'm going to attach in the show notes a link to. There was a great Empire interview she did where she talked about a lot of the inspiration of episode 1, some of the plans she had, and I'll sprinkle some of those questions throughout. But Jessica's background is in comedy, particularly she is the writer of record of one of the most popular episodes of an animated series. Do you know the name of that series and what episode it is?
I don't know. Is it Rick and Morty? I don't know.
It is. And what episode would it be?
Is it the pilot? I don't know.
This is the only thing you know about Rick and Morty.
About when he turns into a pickle?
Pickle Rick. She wrote the Pickle Rick episode of Rick and Morty.
All right. Well, shout out to Trey's hockey team. So
yes, my son's team isn't allowed to watch Rick and Morty, but they all have Pickle Rick jerseys with like a height. And so I bring this up because
they're 10U, by the way. So yeah, they're not allowed to watch that.
Yeah, and so I brought that up because she has a strong background in comedy. She does a lot of animated series. She does a lot of comedic work. And so Jessica, when she approached this series, the first thing she wanted to do, she also did Silicon Valley, corporate, Take My Wife, Robot Chicken. So sort of things that break the fourth wall. Things are very absurdist. Joke, but then you wait and then you hit them with another joke. And I thought it reflected well in this first episode. And what were your thoughts? I'll start with you, WH, and swing around to you, Melissa. What were your thoughts on the fourth wall break before we even get into the series? How did you feel about them? And can you, WH, kind of like you did in the primer, enlighten folks about why that's such an important element of the show?
So personally, I thought it was fine. I didn't think they went overboard with it. And I like the fact that when like the time she breaks the fourth wall and Bruce is in the scene with her, he's in the background because they're fixing the bar. And he's making reference to like, you'll get your, you can have your normal life back, Jen. I'm fine with that. And she just looks at the audience and says, and looks directly at the camera and says, no, that's not true, or something like that. And he looks at her like, who are you talking to? So the fact that she acknowledges that she's talking to like us, the viewer, but he doesn't know that she's talking to us. He's just saying, who's she talking to? I think that's really cool because like I like the idea that she's the only one who is aware of what she's doing, in the sense like she maybe she sees us, but other characters do not. I'm just wondering, is she okay? Is she having some kind of an episode or something like that? And this is a nod to like one of the most popular like series that the She-Hulk character had from the late 80s by John Byrne, who is one of my favorite creators at the time. He did the Fantastic Four legendary run on that book. He did the relaunch of Superman over at DC, and is responsible for so many like great comic books. Just a fantastic artist. Like, you might know him. He's the guy who did the art for the Dark Phoenix saga and Uncanny X-Men with Chris Claremont as the writer. Anyways, he famously wanted to make She-Hulk more of a comedy character and make this book a comedy book to differentiate it from other books in the market at the time. And so one thing he thought, I'm going to have She-Hulk do is like break the fourth wall. And for people who don't know, the fourth wall in comic books and in theater and in films and television is when the one of the characters will look directly at the camera, or if it's theater or in comic books, look at the viewer or the reader and address them directly, as if yes, I'm aware that I'm a fictional character and you are watching me and I'm going to talk to you. It's very, is this an example of being meta, Rich?
Yes, very much so. And that's actually one of the words that Jessica used in her interview on Empire. Uh, in fact, when she first wrote She-Hulk Attorney at Law, there were so many instances of it that Marvel wrote back to her, Kevin wrote back specifically, maybe we don't need the fourth wall breakage. And so she had to kind of curtail it. And point in fact, there was so much fourth wall breakage and so many things jumping around that this actually was the 8th episode in the series. And they figured in post, it was better to do this now to kind of set the stage for what's going to come going forward in the rest of the series.
Right. So it was originally supposed to be only in the 8th episode, and then they brought it.
No. This episode we saw, episode 1, was supposed to be the 8th episode in the series.
Oh, interesting.
And they realized, no, we need to introduce why these things are happening and why she's doing what she's doing. Because if we go in cold, I think they learned the lesson. I might not have felt that way, but I think a lot of viewers did about Moon Knight, where so many things were thrown in later in the game that kind of helped unlock things for the viewer. They wanted to kind of treat it a little differently, particularly if it's going to be a sitcom. Now, for you, Melissa, how did that feel in terms of the fourth wall? I likened it, and when I was thinking about it, my notes for you, to when you would watch Saved by the Bell and Zach Morris would kind of do the timeout, look at the camera, and kind of talk through things.
That's a good analogy for sure, particularly, for someone who's not as familiar with comic book movies. But I liked it because it was like a bridge into the first part of the episode. So the first part of the episode, and maybe this is where the attorney part comes in, but they show her basically prepping for this oral argument, and she's in the zone, prepping for the argument, and then they have this what's supposed to be sort of this stereotypical law firm interaction with a little bit of comedy in there. And then when this particular scene is going on, you can kind of see it in her head. She's thinking wait, what about my job? What about the job I'm supposed to be doing? And he's explaining to her that your life is going to change, and she's like, oh wait, but I have to bill hours. That's what I heard her saying when when she broke the fourth wall. That was the way I interpreted it, because it kind of flashed back in a way to the very, very beginning of the episode when she's in the office.
Hashtag lawyer show. I just to back it up, I mentioned Kat and I mentioned Jessica. I have to mention Tatiana Maslany, one of my favorite actresses in television. Orphan Black is one, as I mentioned in the preview, is one of my favorite TV series of all time. And she is just magnificent in it, playing multiple roles. So seeing her play this is a treat, because there are times, I'll get to one in particular during her chat with Bruce, where you get to see the acting chops in addition to the comedy. And that's where that's where Marvel does such a great job bringing things in. And speaking of that, I want to talk about one of the themes of this episode before we talk about it in terms of the beginning, middle, end, in that much like the rest of Phase 4, the overarching part of grief within the MCU post-Endgame is explored in a backhanded way with Bruce, where if you hadn't thought about it, my man has had 15 years of hard times, baby. And Jen just blithely just brings that out and lawyers him, which I'll get to in our personal relationship, because I felt that several times with our guests being lawyered. Where she apologizes, but she isn't apologizing for the act. She's apologizing for the truth being there and having.
I thought about you.
Yeah. I know you. I thought about you because I felt
yes.
I've had that happen several times. So I'll start with you, Melissa. What did you think about? Obviously, since you haven't seen any of those movies, the story as they told it of Bruce Banner as the Hulk.
I mean, I was vaguely kind of aware of it. There were definitely parts where I was like, okay, some additional background would be helpful right now. But, I was kind of so busy taking in the other parts of the show that you can kind of still infer a number of things, even if you haven't seen, every single movie with the background. But that's how all the Marvel movies are. There's always something when I watch one with you and Trey, that something that I don't necessarily appreciate because I haven't seen whatever came before it. And then you guys are like, oh my goodness, that was great. And I might not have gotten that small part because I didn't watch, whatever it was before. And then you guys are like, oh, you didn't get it. But I can still like really love and appreciate the movie. And kind of the same thing here. Like it was, I was able to follow it. And I think the other thing too was because it was in like one digestible episode, that was shorter, you can kind of watch it, think about it, and then like kind of like come back the next week having a better understanding about who's who. And then like me, for example, I'll probably rewatch it. Like I watched it, before we got on tonight, but like we were saying before, it just came out today. So I'll probably rewatch this particular episode and notice so many more things the second time around. And I do that with pretty much everything I watch. There's, if I have a favorite movie, I still notice things in my favorite movie the second, third, fourth time that I watch it. So, but I like that. I really liked his character. I thought that I thought that they both acted really well together. And that like the first scene, or I guess not the first scene, but I guess it was really the second scene with the car accident was done extremely well. One thing that I noticed that probably not a lot of people noticed was the Cheetos kind of play on the Cheetos was kind of cool. But that part was done really, and I think that sort of gives the viewer as much background as they need to like move forward in that episode. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. And as I joked with WH when we saw the preview of this last week, I'm very proud that my Ford Escape is the official vehicle of Jen Walters prior to the Sicarian transport ship causing a ruckus. Now, for you, WH, what did you think about the whole story of Bruce, the trauma, and how that carries throughout Phase 4?
I think it just like really adds a layer to Jennifer's character, because like he's going on about like this is what I had to do to become the merged version of what he calls Smart Hulk, right? And so I want that, but he assumes that she's gonna be like him at first when he turned into the Hulk, which is like just a rage monster. But she says no, I'm fine, because it's because of Bruce Banner's childhood trauma that he creates, kind of has like a DID kind of, aspect to him as well, like Mark Spector has in Moon Knight, but that the Hulk is a manifestation of his childhood rage at the abuse he suffered at his father's hands. Mm-hmm. But Jennifer Walters never had that. She's perfectly fine. In fact, she's very capable of releasing her anger because she's a woman in modern world. She has colleagues who mansplain shit to her or tell her, oh, do you want me to give the closing arguments? And I can ask Melissa if you have any dumbass male colleagues. Maybe you can't say in public or not. You can tell me off air whether you do or not. But I'm sure you've had instances in your career and in your life as a woman, but as a lawyer in your career of men mansplaining. I apologize for my entire gender. Straight off the bat right here. We are terrible. We are terrible people in general. But like she talks about what it's like to be a woman. Like we see it in the Roadhouse incident where she's waiting for Bruce to pick her up, and these three guys want to like chat her up, but she's not interested. But they just want to harass her because they can't take a hint. And she explains to Bruce, like, this is what I have to deal with being a woman. So she just, she has very good control about her emotions, and she and kind of managing her anger, so she doesn't have like the issues that Bruce had of like basically his id manifests itself as the Hulk based on his childhood. She never had that, so it's just like it's all it's all ego, I guess. Then with her, I'm not a psychologist. I'm not too sure, but I gotta ask Melissa. I have to ask: do you have a bobblehead of RBG in RGB in your office as well?
I do not, but I totally should. I mean, I wish I did. I have multiple books about her, and I have like a book award book that is about her. I mean, I think all of us female attorneys, regardless of your political affiliation, we just really we owe homage to RBG, and I watched the movie. I love the movie. That's the movie that I've watched several times. But my actual favorite movie, I mentioned a favorite movie a second ago, but is a lawyer movie before I ever knew I wanted to be a lawyer. It's Pelican Brief. And so that's another movie where I watch it over and over again, notice something different, something small. But yeah, so and it's really interesting that they chose her to be a lawyer. Like, they could have chosen her to be any other like male dominated profession, right? They could have chosen her to be a orthopedic surgeon, or an accountant, or really just like a general, like she could have just been a general business woman, and it could have, it could have had a similar storyline, right? Like, she could have just been like a.
So in the comics, she's a lawyer because because Bruce goes to her because he's like, hey, do you think you can help me out with all these legal troubles of all the people and property I've destroyed during my during my transformations into the rage monster known as the Hulk? So that's how we get that. And this transfers obviously into this TV show that she's a lawyer.
Right.
She's a prosecutor to start, but I think as the series goes on, she's going to become a defense attorney,
which is interesting,
or something like that. Yeah. And Rich, I'm gonna say my theory about the corporation she's after in this opening episode is, my guess is going to turn out to be Roxanne.
I'm with you. I completely agree, and I think that's a good way for this kind of jump into the case. So she's going into this. She's practicing her closing, as Melissa mentioned, and as you mentioned, is most like, to me, I agree with you. I think it's probably going to be Roxanne, and that would be a nice backdoor way to even tie in Loki, as we'll get to a lot of other properties are tied in tonight in tonight's episode, or today's episode. And so as we get that first early fourth wall break, after Jen gets some, girl power time and asks for her Savage look, which is obviously a nod to Savage She-Hulk, which was another series. And I thought that was fun. You have that happen. Jen gives it. And then she says, what I love that as her catchphrase, lawyer show. And then we go into the preview of her driving months before with Bruce. They run into the Sicarian ship. She's en route to finishing her argument that Captain America is a virgin because of the time it took between his frozen in ice and then saving the world countless times en route to sacrificing himself for everyone during the events of Endgame. And Bruce is having none of it. He is constantly on the back foot with this argument prior to the car accident, and it's just amazing to see. We'll get more on that later. After the car begins to roll and the chopstick trained Cheetos are in mid-flight, which, as an aside, for those of you who want to use your Googles while you're listening to the three of us, Oscar Isaac also eats Cheetos with a chopstick in real life.
I'm going to fucking do this. The next I don't usually eat Cheetos. I'm going to buy a bag of Cheetos and eat them with chopsticks to see what this is like. Because I'm thinking about this. This is a great idea. This is a great idea. What? Listen, you know what? Salt and vinegar chips, chopsticks. I'm fucking doing it. And if Wade comes out here, WH, you can't talk about the salt and vinegar chips. Those are gross. No way. Not liking salt and vinegar is gross.
Hashtag I'm gross because I hate salt and vinegar.
Also, pineapples belong on pizza. Fuck anyone who doesn't agree with me.
We're there. We're together again. So after the car accident, first I want to note that Jennifer's not only the first person to get out, but she saves Bruce. She gets him out of the car. And during their trip, he had mentioned that he had mastered an inhibitor that allowed him to remain in the banner form, which also helped, after the events of Endgame, alleviate some of the healing in his arm, which I want to talk to you real quick, WH. When we last saw Bruce, he was slowly having that happen at the end of Shang-Chi.
Yeah.
What were your thoughts on that?
This is post Shang-Chi.
Yes.
So
timeline.
The Abomination, who's going to show up in Emil Blonsky, played by Tim Roth, the Abomination. This is post, and this would explain Wong going to be showing up as a guest star in this show, which explains a lot. So it's an interesting little nod to the timeline and the idea that Bruce can heal himself. Any wounds that he incurs as the Hulk, he can heal faster if he turns back into Bruce Banner. Now, I think this is an idea they get from the comics. I can't remember exactly which writers run.
The Immortal Hulk.
Okay. So I have not read the Immortal Hulk yet. I'm gonna. They just announced the omnibus, which I will buy, and I'll read it all at once, or over the course of 5 years, as I tend to do with omnibuses. I just bought the Doctor Doom one. I can't wait to break that out and just read about the greatest villain in the history of fiction. Not Darth Vader. I love Star Wars, but Doctor Doom is the greatest villain in all of fiction.
And for those of you who noticed on Twitter, @Rich_Fan, one of the things I did in prepping for this episode was show that my coworker at Pitt is where I work at my day job outside of doing wrestling and podcasting, got us a bunch of stickers as staff for our work laptops. And so I now have a Dr. Doom sticker proudly on my work laptop. Yeah, I got Dr. Doom, Pyotr Rasputin, Kurt Wagner, Nathan Dayspring Ascani's son, and I'm going full
you want
nerd.
me to use the real names? So you're talking about
I only
Colossus,
use real names.
Nightcrawler. Oh, who you fucking Dave Meltzer? The
Yes.
Observer, Colossus, Nightcrawler, and who's the last?
Cable.
And Cable. Right there, you go.
I don't use his Summer's name. He's Ascani's son. We get that out of here.
This guy's son. There you go. Anyway.
Yeah. So
by the way, you need to, I don't want to spoil the surprise, I'm sure, in the future, but like this, I just thought this, like maybe you're going to have to be scouring the internet, maybe eBay for a RBG bobblehead for your wife there.
Yeah.
Listen, WH, for the love of God, I thought we were a team. Not only have I scoured it, but in the nanoseconds between that conversation, it will be here on Saturday. That will be her payment for that will be your payment for appearing with us. Listen, people helping people. That's what we do.
That's awesome. But so I have to make a female attorney observation, which,
Sure.
If there are any other female attorneys who have watched the first episode, there's one part that I know that you noticed, and then I want your guys' honest opinion. If you noticed this, what was she not wearing in the last scene in the courthouse?
She wasn't wearing pantyhose, which I know is or stockings or whatever you want to call it.
Okay. You've heard the story about.
I've heard your complaints. I hear your complaints every time you gotta go to court.
You've heard the story about legal writing too many times. So you probably did you notice that, WH?
I kind of thought about it as like, oh, she's got her bare feet in these shoes, and but I didn't really think about it too much. But it's very unprofessional, like in any kind of.
So I mean, I guess like a brief lawyer sidebar, which is when we just digress, is when we say it's a sidebar. Show.
That's what this is.
Yeah, so if lawyers are ever digressing or like sidebar, that means like, woo, you're gonna go down a rabbit hole. So for our legal writing class, which I loved my legal writing class. I was a TA. My professor was awesome. For our 1L or oral arguments, we had to wear a pantyhose. And my dear friend who was in my legal writing section, who was a really good friend of ours today, her name's Phoebe, Aunt Phoebe, as Trey calls her. She just was beside herself with that requirement, and she just was not happy about it. So, so we had a flash forward end of the year, some people wore them, some people didn't, whatever. But I was having a conversation with a colleague about a week or so ago about how much things have changed in terms of the pantyhose. Like I'm not a litigator, so I don't go to court regularly. We might have like an administrative hearing or something like that, but between things being on Zoom and just things changing, I would totally go to court without pantyhose right now. That would not be, and if someone else did it, like in real life, I probably wouldn't even notice. I mean, I noticed because it was a movie and because I was looking specifically at that, and like her feet were bare and they zoomed in on her legs. But if I saw someone going to court, walking in the courthouse, and they didn't have pantyhose, I wouldn't even notice, because I think things have just changed so much. But it was awesome in this movie. Like, they made it so obvious that she wasn't wearing them. And like, I thought that was awesome.
Tore apart during her transformation.
I don't think so. Because I like looked before and I was like,
no, she was there the whole time.
I was like, she was not wearing pantyhose. And I was like, that's just awesome. No, I mean, she had on like a skirt suit. but like not pantyhose. And I was just like, that was just awesome. And it was a darker suit. Like I would call it gray. I wouldn't say it was black.
Like a gunmetal almost.
Which is also kind of like a statement too. But it was just very interesting. I mean, Rich has heard the story about the oral argument like so many times that, like he probably did notice it, but it was interesting.
Yeah. So just to go double back a bit about the Sakarian courier ship, you know what that means, Rich? We're getting World War Hulk.
I think because again, this goes back to the Variety article. One of the things that Ms. Gao mentioned is that she had a list of things she wanted to do. And originally, you'll appreciate this, WH. Originally, she wanted to do a Black Widow movie where She-Hulk was in it as a sidekick. And when she pitched it and Kevin Feige looked at it, it's like, this looks like a She-Hulk movie with Black Widow in it. And she's like, you got me. And this is what led to her being the showrunner for the series. And so during that, she mentioned she pulled her staff. They wanted more Spider-Man. And that was out of hand. No one Spider-Man related. Sony hasn't been bought yet. I mean, don't say that out loud. And so with the Hulk, two things happened in this show that ties in what you're talking about with World War Hulk. First, he mentions as canon within the MCU, and we've had it happen during the Avengers when Natasha made a joke about his breathing exercises. Everything, we basically erased Ed Norton, and we're juxtaposing Ruffalo into everything that he did, even down to the yoga and everything else. So because of that, they can't bring him in, like because of the agreements. Though there is an argument, and we talked about it during the Week 0 episode primer, there may be a legal standing in the next year where it expires and they get full control again. But if they don't, my addition to what you're saying is I think we get World War Hulks. And we get to see, because one of the things I thought was a nice parallel in this show, and Melissa, I'd welcome your opinion on this, is as much as Jen did a great job of highlighting Bruce's arrogance, like Smart Hulk, he's like, oh, they named me. It's like, but you accepted it. And he's like, I got lawyered. I don't lawyer me about this. Again, side note, I get lawyered about stuff all the time. Even before she became a lawyer, I just take the loss and move on. But we also saw confidence and even arrogance out of Jen. And even though she might not have a passenger back there like Bruce does, if they continue some of the things that happened in, say, the Second Secret War, Jen was the person that used the inhibitor because she had such rage issues after Bruce died during that series that she had to go to counseling and therapy. And most of that series is about her dealing with the trauma of the loss of her cousin and what does it mean to be the only living Hulk that now has the rage issues she at that point hadn't had compared to her cousin.
Right.
And so what do you think about the possibility of World War Hulks and having her be the conduit if the legal issues are there? Or do you think it's just going to be purely World War Hulk, you have Scar, and you have all that fun stuff? Because that would also be a nice backdoor way of talking about the fact, as much as we focused on Cap's sex life, we didn't really talk about Bruce's.
Well, he, in 2 years on Sakaar, like, he probably fathered a lot of kids, maybe, like, then you can introduce the idea of Thundra into like, maybe she was a gladiator on Sakaar. And so like in the comics, there's a character named Thundra who's like, basically she's from a dimension where Amazons rule the earth and men are subordinate to women. And so she wanted, like, I need the perfect specimen to like give me a child. So she picked the Hulk. So she has a daughter, Lyra, who's the daughter, the biological of the Hulk. Hulk also has a child from his time on Planet Hulk, Sakaar, name of Scar, and I think another kid who's like the villain in Planet Hulk. I haven't read Planet Hulk in forever, but he's got a lot of kids. He's never had a kid with Betty Ross though. That's fucked up, man. Like, the only person Bruce Banner's actually been in love with, no kids, but everyone the Hulk's, gotten busy with, a lot of kids on that side. It's really weird. There's some like Freudian, Jungian shit going on there. Again, I'm not a psychologist, so Jordan Goodman and Neil Flanagan are watching this thing. Like, they're gonna be like, you got to know your psychological terms, image, like, and then ring a cowbell or something, you know. But anyways, I don't care about any of that. But yeah, World War Hulks, you gotta have She-Hulk in it. You can backdoor maybe Bruce into it because he won't be the star of it. He'll be part of an ensemble cast. You can have the leader. You can have the Tim Roth returning as the Abomination. Maybe we'll get the introduction of Rick Jones into the MCU.
Yeah, that'd be really fun.
Cool.
And Melissa, before your eyes glaze over, I'm going to jump back into the episode. So after the accident, they're now in Mexico at the secret bunker, which, you know, WH and I will nerd out because this fills in the blank between the first Avengers movie and the second Iron Man movie in terms of the relationship Tony and Bruce developed and how clearly Tony's effect on him has been a positive as much as a negative. I mean, I think Tony's arrogance rubbed off on him, but Tony never got the humility that Bruce was kind of exhibiting to sublimate those rage issues that WH talked about. And you see there the one of the Iron Legion helmets. And I personally, in my head canon, say that's Groot in honor of Tony, much like he did with Stormbreaker, cut off a piece of himself to make that stand for it because it just looked phenomenal. And I don't want to think that he picked it up from like IKEA or somewhere in Mexico. And
but the Iron Man mask there?
Well, no, you had the mask, but it was on this wooden mantle thing. And I just it was like, this is so intricate. I was like, this has to be like Groot, like cut a leg off and just like put it there.
You know who's probably gonna get one of those in real life is probably a friend of the show, Scrump from the PWT cast.
Oh, he should. I mean, that thing's magnificent. It was awesome.
Yeah.
And you see this beautiful bar, you see all these technological things. And Bruce mentions that he spent time down there, not only in the events between Iron Man 2 and Avengers, but in between Avengers, Infinity War, and Endgame, combining, as he said before, the brain and the muscle, the Banner and the Hulk, and making Smart Hulk, or Professor Hulk as he's known in the comics. And Jennifer is just flabbergasted. And as he pulls out this notebook of 15 years of trauma, she decodes it in seconds and breaks his poor heart. Like Bruce is a sad dude when you think about it. And it didn't help that his cousin just laid that bare for us to see. And he just talked. I'm a scientist. I've gone down this lonely road, if you know, word to his old 70s TV show. And I'm just trying to prevent you from having the same traumas I did. And as
I really like. I want to talk about the transformation scene, her first transformation, because it reminded me a lot of the 1970s Hulk TV show where David Banner, would turn into the Hulk played by Bill Bixby, would then turn into like the Hulk played by Lou Ferrigno, right? But it's like some of the shots, like the close up of the eyes, are very much paying homage to that TV show, which I thought was a really nice touch. And I was watching an Easter egg video on YouTube before we started this, Screen Crush. They do a really good job. Ryan Erie does a good job on that show. I don't like all the, like, he's got to fit in the "that's your mom" joke. That's fucking bullshit. Ryan, if you're listening, stop it right now. And he's got terrible sponsors as well. This is why I like, our only sponsors are the listeners of Post Wrestling.
Listeners and viewers like you.
And then I don't have to put them over or anything. In fact, I can bury them, which I'm pretty sure I will do when we get to the reader comments later on. But I want to say, what was my point about?
You were talking about Banner. You were talking about the TV
Banner,
show.
yeah. So in Screen Crush, he pointed out why was he called David Banner and not Bruce Banner on the Hulk TV show? And says, you know why? I
Rich? Can't remember.
It's because the TV executives at I think it was CBS.
Oh, they said Bruce wasn't manly enough.
No, they say, quote unquote, it's too gay.
Oh, I tried to church it up. I knew it was something 70s, just horrible. And that's and even think about, we talked about it in the primer. I know, Melissa, you didn't listen to the primer, but the main reason we got She-Hulk in the comics is because the television show wanted to develop that character, and they're like, we're bringing that over here. We need that money. And
we want to control the rights to any kind of Hulk character. So,
and that, I mean, God bless him, because I love this. And one of the things with the transformation I enjoyed, I'm a big fan of Great American Werewolf of London and anything involving werewolves. Like, werewolves are my first love. I was never a vampire guy as a kid. I was always team werewolf. And one of the favorite tropes of a werewolf transformation is you go from third person to first person in terms of the transformation process. And we saw that with Jen with the shot counter shot of her eyes, like you mentioned. And then we see her seeing herself expand and then scream and run into the woods. And then again, favorite werewolf trope, waking up in the middle of the woods with your outfit disheveled and thankfully no blood on her. And then she staggers into this bar where we, like you mentioned, meet these ladies who just became like her super team in terms of getting her dressed, made up, cleaned up, and absolutely phenomenal coming out of there. And then off we pop to the events that eventually lead to her back in Mexico. Now I'm gonna ask
we should mention how she gets the curse is because like Bruce is in human form in this car crash. So he can bleed because he's Bruce, he's human form. And then Jen saves him first, but she's also got a wound on her arm or her hand.
Yeah, gash that she cut wide open as she opened the door.
And so he's bleeding from the head. So his blood seeps into with her, mixing with her blood. But because they share so many genetic traits, because they're cousins, are they paternal or maternal cousins? That's what I want to know.
Oh, funny you should ask, because I currently have up, thanks to Marvel from 2019, the Banner family tree. And so they are, let me see. I'm going to find it real quick. They are maternal.
Maternal. So their mothers are related, or...
Brian Banner had two sisters, but one represented here is Elaine Banner Walters and her husband Morris Walters.
Okay, so it's Bruce's father's sister.
Yes.
Is Jennifer's mother.
Yes.
Okay, there you go. Anyways, so she, like Samuel Stearns in the Edward Norton Hulk movie, this is how he eventually becomes the leader, is she becomes She-Hulk because she gets his blood mixed with hers because he's still in human form. Anyways, I thought that was really good. I think it's better than the origin of the comic books.
Yeah. And I also think, and we want to point this out, we talked a little bit about the healing factor, and he talked about how it was a miracle after the snap that he started to heal a little bit when he turned back. He mentioned specifically once they're in the bunker in Mexico after he's had the explanation to Jen, that her blood accelerated his healing to the point where he now is whole again. And he doesn't need the inhibitor anymore. Also, it was the prototype and it broke. And so he waxes poetic about this. And then, as she says, a bit dramatic, destroys it with a flamethrower. Like, yeah, he really could have burned it in some other way, but instead, she found a different way. And yeah, so now we're treated to the world's quickest montage of 15 years of trauma being converted into about a week and a half of her outdoing him in every single way to his chagrin. And because of his anger issues, you could see him getting angrier and angrier as the event goes on. So Melissa, as you heard the tune of Sweetie while she was doing the workout and proving she could outdo him, and she knows yoga because she wants to have a tight butt, and he's like, "You're my cousin, I can't think about you," but it's like up high. What were your thoughts on the training, and what were your thoughts on seeing the Hulk kind of get more annoyed as she outdid him at every step?
Oh, that part was awesome. That part was like, I really like that part because, I mean, it you could kind of see like what her emotional like baseline was gonna be, like what the baseline annoyance was, and like kind of like comparing that to like the last scene, because like you like during the workout part, she was annoyed, but like it wasn't. You could tell like it was still controlled, and like kind of like what we were talking about before, how you see the emotional regulation showing up differently in a female character than it would be in a male character. It's like if that were a male character, I think that would just be like way that would just blow up, right? But like you kind of see it in a female character, like, all right, we still gotta keep it in check, but like at the same time, I'm still the boss.
And
WH, how did you feel about that scene, particularly the shove off the mountain as she gives him the middle finger?
I really think this is where Tatiana Maslany like really shines, because her comedic timing is fantastic. She's such a great actress. I like the chemistry she has with Mark Ruffalo. It's very natural, so you can believe that they grew up together. They've known each other most of their lives as from childhood on. And it's fun. It's different from a lot of like different other montage scenes. It's way better than that crap we see in like the fucking Hobbs and Shaw movie where like Jason Statham and Dwayne are like on the fucking island with Roman Reigns like building this trap for this hardcore mercenary black ops team that they're somehow going to defeat because quote unquote family. Go fuck yourself. That's such a stupid lame concept to promote. Oh, I'm gonna beat you. I'm gonna beat highly trained military operatives because we're family. Shut up. So lame, dumb. I hate the Fast and the Furious. I you know what? I like a lot of the movies because the villains are good. But the main characters are complete dog shit. Vin Diesel especially. Oh, by the way, the I Am Groot stuff, best thing Vin Diesel's ever done because he only says one thing in those in this thing. Sorry. I am Groot. He's Vin Diesel, best thing he's done in decades. Because most other thing he does, like the Bloodshot movie, unwatchable trash. I watched 5 minutes of it and I was like, I'm done. I'm out. Vin's all over this. Most of the Fast and Furious movies, past 5, he's terrible in them. Don't even get me started how he ruined the character Riddick. How do you fuck up that character? Oh, I know how. You're Vin fucking Diesel. That's how you fuck up that character. Anyways, sorry, where were we again?
We were talking about, I mean, we were talking about just the relationship between Jen and Bruce and the training montage, but this is a good place to jump in. I'll start with you, WH, and then Melissa, I want you to give your thoughts, especially as someone that doesn't watch a lot of these movies and shows. What did you think about the CG? Going into this series, there were a lot of questions about the status of the CG. Even Jessica Gao mentioned that they had so many scenes at first when Kevin Feige, her first question was, how much is too much She-Hulk? And he said, there is no limit. The limit does not exist, if I can borrow that from Mean Girls. And lo and behold, they get into post, and he's like, we need more Jen scenes because, one, it had become public with the amount of people that had been overworked in the CG departments they have been hiring for this, and two, it got, she wanted to make sure I didn't go over a budget. He's like, there is no budget that you can go over. And then all of a sudden there was a budget you can go over. And so with the cleanup, compared to that first ad, WH, what did you think of the CG? Particularly because this Mexico experience was solely two CG characters talking to one another mainly.
It's fine. I don't expect a lot. Honestly, like I understand that, with the limitations of TV budgets, TV schedules, that you cannot make this look like a multi-million-dollar movie. It's not going to be the Avengers. It's not going to be the standalone Hulk film. So, I was in a private chat with the future guest we're going to have on one of the future episodes. And like, he was just like complaining about it nonstop in that episode. So that's going to be a fun episode when we talk with him in the future. But I was fine with it. Like, I think it looked way better than the first preview, which I was just like, if for those longtime listeners, MCU later, like when we talked about that that teaser, I was like, no, this looks terrible, absolutely terrible. And then I saw the first trailer. I was like, okay, this looks better. And now I'm fine with it. Like, you have to lower your expectations for television versus the movies. Let's just be honest. And here's the thing. The other thing is like these VFX, talents that are out there, especially working for Disney and Marvel, there's so many terrible stories out there about how they are overworked and underpaid by Marvel. It's ridiculous. I kind of feel bad. I sometimes don't try to avoid reading those because I don't want to feel guilty about enjoying watching Marvel or Disney stuff. So I think they really need to like kind of fix this problem because a happy VFX artist is a productive VFX artist, in my opinion. And hire more people, for God's sakes. Give people jobs.
Give them jobs. Give them jobs. And Melissa, I know you have a hard out because you actually have to get home because you're currently at my in-laws having dropped our son off. So why don't you give this answer, and then like anything you want to support or throw out, feel free to do so, and then myself and WH will take it home.
All right, cool. Yeah, I mean, I agree. Like, the quality compared to like some of the other, like Black Panther. I mean, obviously it's not the same, but like I said, it's certainly a more like digestible form. a form to watch, and I think it's probably going to draw in a lot of like more casual Marvel viewers, like myself, who aren't going to go to the 3-hour movie. Maybe they go to see Black Panther because of all of the hype around it, or maybe a different movie. But I think just kind of like that accessibility, I think is going to draw people in. Now, obviously, like they have money, so like yes, they should hire more people to enhance whatever it is. Like it's not like they don't have the money, but I think you're right. I think when you're watching something on TV and you can just stream it at 7:00 in the morning before you go to work, like that you do kind of sacrifice that. But I don't think that was the original question. I know we kind of dove into that, but
Oh no, that's good. The CG was like, I just wanted to get your opinion. Did it take you away from the episode? Did you feel like anytime they were talking, you kind of felt, what's this?
No, I mean not really. Like I said, I mean I think there were probably some parts that were like lost on me just because I don't watch all the Marvel movies and I haven't read all the comics, so I don't have that whole background. But I mean overall, like, overall I thought it was extremely well done. And I know I'm going to be watching the next episode. I feel like a lot of people probably will too, just to kind of see where it's going to go from here. And I think like both parts were done equally well, like the kind of like the present day parts, and then I'll call it a flashback, but that's probably not the right word. And then like kind of like the flashback parts were done well, both done well. Oftentimes, one will be significantly better than the other. And it's sort of obvious, but that wasn't the case here.
Awesome. And so before you get out of here, my love, is there anything you want folks to go to, like one of the charities you work for, or anything you want them? Like, I know you don't have like a podcast or anything. Oh God, if you had a podcast.
I know. I don't have a podcast. I do not have a podcast. I just, sometimes make my appearances on yours. But I encourage viewers to rewatch this episode like I'm going to, and like think about try to watch it from the perspective of somebody who is a minority, whether if it's a woman in a male dominated field, or like somebody who doesn't necessarily traditionally have that voice, and like see what you can take away from it, watching it from a slightly different perspective than whatever your perspective is.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your night, as if I'm not going to see you.
I'll see you in 20 minutes.
All right.
If you're still on in 20 minutes.
Oh, no, I won't be. Me and WH got a deal. We keep these right. We keep it tight.
Okay. All right. Well, all right. When I get off, you and the viewers can, kind of get into the weeds. So
she's like, you can do your nerd talk. All right, dear. Love you. And thank you for being on.
Love you too. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Melissa. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
All right. So that was Melissa Fann, attorney at law, talking about She-Hulk, attorney at law.
That's great.
I regret the fact that I didn't get a chance to talk to her a little bit about Titania and that ending, because that is really the next step we're going to. So after the training, we get one of the fun things, WH, the Hulk fight. Because if you have two heroes, the comic book rule is they're going to fight, because you got to fight before you become friends. What did you think of the fight? What did you think of the impetus of the fight in terms of the argument they had and Bruce just finally getting sick of her crap? And also Jen getting sick of him talking down to her and thinking his sad story was her same tale and kind of like misery sister and brother. And most notably, what did you think of the return of the Thunderclap?
Yeah, I mean, it's okay. I don't think it didn't necessarily stand out for me, this fight between them. It just seemed like a natural progression of the narrative that we were dealing with in the relationship, in like Bruce trying to like help her cope with being a Hulk, and he's just like, no, I got it. It's okay. I just wanted to go back to being a lawyer. And he's like, no, you gotta, you have such a responsibility now, which is such a huge theme in this in this show, in this episode at least, which I assume is going to be the theme throughout the whole show, is like this idea that if if you have power, you have a responsibility to use it wisely. And this is like the theme of like most heroes in comic books, particularly I think more so in Marvel than in DC. Spider-Man, of course, with great power comes great responsibility. But you see it with Captain America, you see it with the Fantastic Four, you see it with, Bruce Banner is constantly trying to make, atonement for like what he feels is like this power that he can't control. But he's always trying to like either get rid of it or bring it under control because he wants to be more responsible about being the Hulk. And he's trying to impart that to her. Is like this idea like, hey, you can help people. Like one thing I think we can take away from this is that he is the Hulk is probably, and as a scientist is probably doing as much as he can to help other people using not only his powers as Hulk but also his intellect as Bruce Banner as a genius level scientist. So I'm curious to see how this will parlay into other episodes. I'm kind of curious as to how often Mark Ruffalo is going to be appearing in the show. I assume not that much because I do think we need to like kind of keep it under, keep it under control. We don't want to make this like the de facto, oh, it's the Hulk in every episode. Because I think that's kind of detrimental to Jen's character and Tatiana's performance. So, I think maybe 9 episodes. Like maybe the last 2 again, he'll appear, or just do little cameos here and there.
Well, I don't want to. Do you want me to tell you? Because
IMDb
has them by credits, so he's in all 9 episodes.
Oh, really? Okay. Yes. I can't imagine he's like as much as this one. He's got to be like more like on the TV screen as she's conferencing, zooming with him, or StreamYarding. Yeah, no, not StreamYard. They're not recording a podcast.
You never know. If you say that now, but one of the things they talk about when they did the preview for the show, Titania's on social media. She's on Instagram. She might have recorded a podcast before she broke into that courthouse.
So Titania, I assume, was there to attack the defendant in that court case.
Well, it looked like they were there to attack the jury at one point. But I think you're right. She could have been under the employ of someone, maybe Wilson Fisk, because looking at this, if IMDb's telling the truth, it says that Charlie Cox is in 8 episodes.
Right. He's in 8 episodes?
8 of the 9 episodes.
So he's going to show up next week.
Which means he's probably going to be the attorney for the defense of, or maybe he's the prosecutor for Blonsky.
Oh, well, yeah, we'll see. No, he's not a prosecutor, though. Matt Murdock is always a defense lawyer.
Yeah.
Except when he's not. But I don't think he's I don't think he's a prosecutor.
And maybe not and this is where Melissa could have helped. One of the key stories in one of the later runs of She-Hulk was a case where Captain America, as I mentioned last week, was charged with potentially leading to the death / injury of the person who was supposed to be the first experimental super soldier serum recipient. The argument was by the lawyer at the time that the surviving family members had evidence that proved that Steve Rogers basically jumped the line. And Steve, in the comics, hired Matt Murdock to argue the case and hired Jen as his attorney because he wanted the 2 best lawyers in the world to prove or disprove the argument. And so that made me very excited. So I don't know, maybe if it's something like that, or if it's just he's going to be in there with lawyer advice, but I don't know. That seems very interesting.
So to me, like Titania, who by the way is a character from the comics, I think her first appearance is in Secret Wars, the first Secret Wars on Battle World, and she's created by her real name in the comics is like Skeeter. Why? By the way, you mentioned Saved by the Bell. Zach Morris, one of the worst fictional characters of all time. What a scumbag.
Look in the series, in the sequel, he becomes governor of California, and he stepped on some bodies to get there.
Oh, totally. He totally threw people under the bus. Totally slept with too many women, probably, and just refuses to pay child support. That's the kind of person Zach Morris is. But anyways, all right. So where we Titania? You know what? Kind of like I think she kind of reminds me of like it'd be cool if she's actually a female wrestler who got powers accidentally and is now, like using them for some reason. Because her getup is kind of like, hey, she could be a modern day wrestler.
Mm-hmm. And that'd be pretty funny. And I think looking at this, in the Variety article, they talk about how the one conceit as we get back, and Jen's now a lawyer, and we do the flash forward, and we've now talked about the fact that during that case, she does in fact give the closing, and then doesn't turn into She-Hulk. She merely does it as Jen Walters. Titania comes in and she hides. The first thing she does is hide like everyone else. Mm-hmm. And her loyal friend says, hey, maybe you should get out there. Like Nikki Ramos is like, come on, go do the thing. And he's like, I like this shoe. I like this suit. I like these shoes. So she takes off the shoes, turns into She-Hulk, handles business. We get the outro by Eve, which I'll get you later. But as that's happening, that made me think again about the Variety article, because Jennifer Gao mentioned that no one in the writer's room had law scene experience. And so when people talked about the idea of this reminded you of Ally McBeal, this is when I was going to see if Melissa pulls the ripcord and leaves us for dead. I felt very old when she said no one in the writer's room remembered that show. And so they really based it off of Fleabag. Okay. And that hurt my heart, because I was driving to work. I saw this at 7 a.m. I was driving into work, and I'm running in my head. I was like, you have to understand, to me, this being an Ally McBeal kind of like adjacent show is one of the most penultimate Marvel-y things I ever had happen in this weird timeline, because without Ally McBeal, you don't get the Reclamation Project for Robert Downey Jr., which fails because he at that point was in jail for drunk driving and was allowed by the judge, because he was so talented as an actor, to film his episodes of Ally McBeal until he crashed his car again. And they're like, no, you're done with that. You're off the show. You stay in jail until you figure it out. And he was at his lowest ebb when they needed to make that D-list character famous and start what we're now watching on television. Like, to me, right, Ally McBeal is the weirdest little piece of it. It's the guy that's like right behind Rick Jones, like, no, don't do it. But it's still just as important.
Right. No, like I told you not watch Ally McBeal. So I did not know or remember that Robert Downey Jr. was on that show.
Yeah. But now for those of you who have heard it and have seen it, I want you to write in next week, because I'm about to say bygones. It's fine. It's bygones. One of the main characters would just passive aggressively say bygones and basically do what Bruce does and push down whatever the thing was that threw him off, and then just pretend like it doesn't bother him, but it does. So Ally McBeal, not the best show in the world, but it gave me the guy who then became the guy that helped save the guy who saved the girl in this TV series. And that's how Rich Fann's brains work. So forgive me, y'all. That's what I do.
But Robert Downey Jr. was also in the sequel to The Fugitive, U.S. Marshals, with Tommy Lee Jones and Wesley Snipes.
I love that movie. Him with the chewing of his little nervous tick and trying to repeat the outhouse, jailhouse, courthouse. Like, he tried his version of it when Tommy Lee Jones got his chance to kind of like add on to it, and he was the nerdy FBI guy they didn't want to trust because he's got the high-tech things. And I do things a different way. People shouldn't get old, because I would love Tommy Lee Jones to exist forever. He should be a Highlander. Again, sidetracking. I'm looking at this clock. We're going to have to get back on time.
But let's get to the mid-credit scene.
Mid-credit scene.
And then hold on. I before I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the credit sequence. I think is all done by a local Toronto artist that I kind of adjacently know, by the name of Kagan McLeod, because he tweeted out that he worked on, and it looks so much like his art that I assume he did all the credit, the art for the credit sequences. Kagan McLeod is the artist and creator of a comic book called Infinite Kung Fu. Check it out, people. It's a fun book. He's also a huge hip hop fan. So he does all this like hip hop themed art that if you go to his, like, I guess his Instagram, his Twitter, that you can find it. It's Kagan McLeod, KAGAN MCLEOD. And so check it out. and like I want to shout out him. I haven't talked to that guy in like 15 years, maybe. But like I was like so happy, like, oh my god, that's Kagan's artwork. It looks, and it's like I see him on Twitter like tweeting it out. I'm like, oh, that's awesome. It's like a Toronto connection. There's him. Tatiana's lives in Toronto. I'm from Toronto. Wade is from Toronto. John Pollock's from Toronto. Like you got to come visit us here, Rich. At some point.
Oh, I mean, listen. If Melissa was here, she would be in what my friends have lovingly called friend mode, and she would be like, "Listen, let's pause this podcast. Let's get some dates. Let's get things set up," because that's how she rolls. If anything, she would have rescheduled like I want to say, let's see, this was pre-COVID. That would have been our 10th wedding anniversary. We went to Edmonton. And she was like, I will retroactively declare that we should have gone to Calgary. I was like, you didn't know WH back then. I didn't know WH back. Like, what are you doing?
Why? But I'm not in Calgary. I'm in Toronto.
But that's her. She was like, I would have been like, let's go Toronto. Let's go everywhere. She would have been like, let's make this like a 3-week sojourn through Canada. Like we're freaking.
Calgary. I'm like thinking, wait, am I the last surviving member of the Heart Dungeon?
You might be. Are you?
Well, you know who.
Where were you on January 6th?
You know who isn't a true trainee of the Heart Dungeon? Chris Jericho. But anyways,
whoa. He's one of Winnipeg's finest. And you know who else is from Winnipeg? Ken Chan.
So it's Don Callis.
Yeah, they're the Winnipeg 3.
Explains my here's the thing. I actually like Winnipeg as a city. I've been there a couple of times. It's a very fun place. For when I was in college radio, I went there for a college radio conference twice. It's a very fun place. Great music scene. Anyways, post-credit scene or mid-credit scene. Let's go.
All right. So first thing, per Jessica Gao. The goal for them was to have a mid-credit scene every episode. So I'm a little excited about that because it's going to be just like any other comedy where they just have things that go. And second of all, I'm going to let you talk about this scene because the one thing we talked about beforehand was your excitement for this. But I want to tell you, the first thing she did when she was writing this was it was going to be an entire season-long joke. And she went to Kevin Feige to get the official canonical answer, which we got during that stinger. And why don't you lay it on the folks?
So throughout the episode, she's like trying to get Bruce to tell her, hey, confirm that Captain America, Steve Rogers, has never had sex, that he is indeed a virgin. Because from his transformation, he would have been too busy. He probably never had sex when he was pre-super soldier serum, Steve Rogers. And so this leads to the car crash. And then we revisit it here in the mid-credit scene. I keep saying post, it's the mid-credit scene. And like they're drinking and she's crying because why did Steve die a virgin? Like they bring up his ass because it's a running joke that Steve Rogers / Chris Evans has a great ass. And like, that ass didn't deserve to die a virgin. It's like, so Bruce is finally tired of this shit. He's like, listen, he's not a virgin. When he was doing the USO turds, trying to drum up money from, trying to promote war bonds, he had sex with one of the dancers on the USO tour. And then she's like, I knew it. She got him. It's great. Loved it.
I always like that because she wasn't that drunk. He's like, you're not that drunk. Nope.
Lawyered. There you go.
And
I loved it.
And Kevin Feige greenlighting it, just like with the rated R movies. He greenlit when we knew about the Lost Virginian for Cap. I thought that was hilarious. And I think that as they keep going with this series, if they keep getting things like this, it's fun. It's like I said, it's very fun. So you all have heard from us. Now let's hear a little bit from those of you who took the time to go to our post wrestling forums, and you can go forum.prowrestling.com if you want to join in every week. Folks throw in their feedback to the MC Later thread, and we try to read them and provide some insight of our own. And so we have a couple of those, and why don't we take a look? And so our first, let's see, there we go. our first person, and I got to bring this into the stream, so bear with me, folks, is Muggin from Toronto. I'm sorry, from Ottawa. Oh my God, I'm screwing up Canada all over the place, guys. Forgive me. And Muggin says, much has been said about She-Hulk for months, especially the discourse about the CGI. Well, to hell with all that noise. The first episode gets off to a strong, self-aware start. Tatiana Maslany nails it as Jen Walters. She captures her charm, self-awareness, and go-getter attitude with such aplomb. Her chemistry with Ruffalo is terrific, and I loved how they differ on how to channel anger and how it took Bruce a long time to master his, whereas Jen mastered hers from childhood. In addition, the tone is reminiscent of a John Burns work with a bit of the modern stuff of Dan Slott and Charles Soule. It's light, breezy fun. And I know when we get to our recommendations, you have some, so I'm looking forward to that. Thanks, Muggin. Appreciate that. What were your thoughts on that one, WH?
Yeah, he's got a lot of good points. I agree with most of them. So, we don't have to like comment on all the comments. Like,
we don't have to comment on the. I'm learning. No. I'm learning as I go. I'm a self-actualizing.
They speak for themselves. You know, we just have to read them. I'll do second cup of the day. I still want to know second cup of what? Irish whiskey, Scotch, like Bruce Lord's famous cabinet of alcoholic disaster that he probably wakes up quite like Jennifer Walters, like disheveled, you know, not knowing where have I. It's all that Scotch you're drinking there, Bruce. Anyways, that brief bit about how she has to hide her frustration / anger in a work environment the way men don't have to makes me hope we'll get parenthesis, not cliche comparison of men versus women standards, not just of male female Hulk, but expectations of men / women in society or professional settings. A little social commentary in shows can be nice, and we will still have a way to go in that respect. The alien ship and all the Steve discussion makes me think there will be a lot more connections to the wider universe. Did it bother anyone else that Jen's CGI mouth was out of sync with dialogue, but Bruce's CGI mouth was better matched? Like, listen, second cup of the day. I don't know how many fucking times you watched this to notice that. No, it didn't bother me because I didn't fucking notice it. Anyways, and finally, that Hulk transformation also gives glorious volume in her hair. Jen Walters better be approached for a shampoo commercial in one of these episodes. Can you imagine if they distill Bruce's blood to replace Rogaine and male pattern baldness is solved in the multiverse? Sure, that sounds like a great idea. You want to go next? You can.
Sure.
And then I'm gonna, I think Second Cup has another point here, but I'll read that quick after you read from Manny from here.
Sure. So Manny from Pacoima, pretty great opener, is someone who doesn't know much about the character. I enjoyed this introduction to Jen Walters. Seeing everything come so natural to her as a new Hulk while Bruce's jealousy kept growing was a nice touch of a family rivalry. Bruce mentioning Tony on more than one occasion makes me wonder if later on we'll see his loss has really affected him, or maybe Bruce was just a one-off for the show. Well, we found that out. No. I'm looking forward to the rest of the episodes getting to know more about Jen Walters, attorney at law. Also, WH, did Tony Stark change the Punk Moxley match to next? Oh, wrong Tony. Did Tony change the Punk Moxley match to next week because he heard you're going to be in Chicago?
Listen, Tony Khan better not be giving that fucking match away on TV. All right. There may be some schmoz happening, and we get it at fucking All Out in Chicago because I'm going to be there in Chi-Town. All right. I'm going to be eating deep dish pizza and fucking hot dogs. Apparently, like I'm getting all the recommendations. Gotta eat. Have you ever eaten a Chicago hot dog, Rich? I hear it's a unique way they
yeah, I heard that from my assistant editor or associate editor over at The Torch, Zach Haydorn. He's from Chicago. He recommended I do it. I didn't because I'm usually pretty picky about my hot dog. Instead, I got the lasagna they call a pizza. No offense, Chicago, but as a New Yorker, I got to take offense. But no, I didn't do the Chicago dog. It was just a little too busy for me.
I'm gonna try to do it anyway.
Bless you.
Yeah. TK, he's done a lot of like good shit, but TK, don't change that fucking match to free TV. Anyway, second cup of the day again. His loss has really affected him. He's quoting that. Great pointing that out. They did the grief theme with Spider-Man, but a more mature version of that might be neat to see. Okay, yeah, there you go. Anyways.
Boom. And then we got Robbie from London, Ontario. Definitely loved this debut. Made even more better how much my partner loved it as well, since She-Hulk, along with Spider-Woman, is one of her absolute favorite fictional characters. This was a ton of fun and a great way to set the stage. Can't wait for more.
There you go. Jay from Colorado. Excellent first episode. I love the direction and the tone of the series. One thing I always look forward to with these Marvel shows is MCU later. Oh, sorry. That goes without saying. One thing I always look forward to with these Marvel shows, ever since WandaVision, is the end credits, as they are always as fun and unique and reward you for paying attention to details. Nerds. As a fan of law and crime podcasts and quote unquote lawyer shows, I thought it was a perfect touch that they were done in the style of courtroom sketches. That's a good point. Yes. Looking forward to having MCU later back on the menu for a bit. Yeah, I kind of find that hard to believe, Jay from Colorado, since you spelled later wrong. It's L, the number 8, and R, not the fucking like LATER. Maybe we should just call him Jay from Hater. Maybe he doesn't actually like this show. I don't know. So next time, Jay, if I see it spelled like this again, I'm gonna ban you from this discussion. I will not be reading your feedback anymore in future episodes.
And as we always say, thank you again for your commentary and providing your comments there on forum.postwrestling.com. You can do that for any show, really, in the Post Wrestling family. But most importantly, do it for MCU later because we get to read them. Unless you behave. If you don't misbehave, you get shadow banned, and you don't want to deal with that. So before we get out of here, WH, what do you want folks to know as far as things they might want to read? Any comic book recommendations? Anything in that nature?
Yeah. So the Sensational She-Hulk by John Byrne, Volume 1. We're gonna have a link to the to this. Did I send it to Way, or you gonna send it to Way? The link I sent you.
I am. I'm gonna put it in the notes.
Yeah. So it's basically, this is the book that this show is based on, essentially, along with, like, you know, the Dan Slott run, the Charles Soule run. But this is where it's all started, breaking the fourth wall, kind of making her a more comedic character. And yeah, it's fun. It's probably just before the start of his decline, in my opinion, as an artist. Like, he's got the Namor series that he's still very good as a writer and artist on. This is before Nextman, which is his creator-owned stuff, which is, in retrospect, I'm like, that was why'd I ever like that? Oh, I was just blinded by my fandom. But anyways, Sensational She-Hulk by John Byrne, Volume 1. Check it out. It's a fun book, and the art is great.
Excellent. And, you know, I mentioned in the preview, definitely go with the Soule run. I loved it for kind of the, and again, I was disappointed. You know, Melissa had to get home, but I asked her to read a couple of those on my Marvel Unlimited account, and she really enjoyed the experience, and kind of, we kind of talked through the billable hours, like she mentioned, like they loosely mentioned it here. And that was something that was really fun for her, because it was, again, a reflection of her life as an attorney, and seeing how that reflects in a comic book was really interesting, because that's not something people usually talk about. But we're done talking for this week. Thanks again for taking a listen. And again, for those of you who are on the free side of things, go to postwrestlingcafe.com for the rest of these podcasts. If you want to join the Patreon. It's very inexpensive for the cost of one cup of coffee over at Tim Hortons. You can get yourself a membership and join tons of patrons who enjoy the great work of the folks here at Post Wrestling. Until next week, of course, we're in.
So I'll be here next week.
You'll be here. So next week, you get to see, again, now you've seen my wife of 13 years.
Who's our guest next week? I forget.
Yeah, next week, our guest is the person I've spent the last 7.5 years worth of Wednesdays talking wrestling, comic books, and life, and arguing with and falling asleep talking to Travis Bryant from the Pro Wrestling Torch, the East Coast cast, where I first started as a Pro Wrestling Torch contributor, and then kind of exploded into the point there. He is my Rick Jones. If there wasn't a Travis Bryant, I would not be here knowing and befriending and talking to W.H. Park. So I'm eternally grateful to Travis.
Well, thank God it's not Will Cooling.
Oh, listen, I got to also blame Travis for me eventually beating Will Cooling, because it all comes together. Sliding doors. It's fine. I love Will, but he's crazy. So Travis is my host over on the East Coast cast, over on the Pro Wrestling Torch side of things. He is one of the biggest fans of female protagonists in comic books. He spent years not reading any of the books we would send him until he was introduced to Spider-Woman, She-Hulk, Kamala Khan, Lunella, Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur, and a host of others that kind of just fit him. He's always been a big fan of female-driven leads, either in television, movies, or in books, and so that's how we got him into comics. So Travis is going to talk about it.
Cool.
He also has an unnatural obsession with She-Hulk in terms of the She-Hulk memes carrying dudes around. So those jokes in our judgment will be there for him. Feel free to judge him. I do it all the time.
I don't kink shame. Well, maybe I do, but
we're gonna have to do it.
I'll try not to.
Yeah, and as always, before we get out of here, thank you folks for listening. Thank you for joining us on this journey. Until next time, WH.
MCU later.